Okay, so this is my special education assessment review, also known as media clip final project, I believe. I just want to apologize for the way it's laid out real fast. I couldn't figure out how to get it in slideshow mode without my picture disappearing, so I will be presenting like this. So going on to the first slide, we're going to be looking at least restrictive environment. We're going to ask, what is a least restrictive environment? We're going to look at Individuals with Disability Education Act definition of least restrictive environment, also known as the IDEA definition. And then we're going to look at some examples of what a least restrictive environment can look like in a classroom. The least restrictive environment means educating each child with peers in the general education classroom to the greatest extent possible. Under the IDEA, the definition is found under section 300.11, subsection A2, and it states that to the maximum extent appropriate, children with disabilities, including children in public or private institutions or other care facilities, are educated with children who are non-disabled, and special classes, separate schooling, or other removal of children with disabilities from the regular educational environment occurs only if the nature or the severity of the disability is such that education and regular classes with the use of supplementary aids and services cannot be achieved satisfactorily. So as you can see, when comparing the two definitions, the IDEA definition is a more in-depth, more explanatory definition rather than the one sentence definition that I stated at the beginning. It can be very beneficial to look at the IDEA one just to get a full understanding of what a least restrictive environment is and what it can look like. The least restrictive environment can be demonstrated in many ways. So when looking at how it can be seen, you can see many different ways in the general education classroom. Because of this, it can also affect the way special education services are provided for the students as well. For example, a student can be in a general education classroom and receive support from a para or an aide, or the student can have a partial day in the general education classroom and spend the other half of their day in a special education classroom. All of this depends on the student's needs, what their disability is, and the severity of their disability, whether or not that they need to spend more time in the general education classroom or they need to spend more time in a special education classroom. But it is important to get that integration of the gen ed classroom for students with disabilities. Moving on, we are going to talk about the assessment process as a cycle and viewing the assessment process as a cycle. We're going to ask ourselves, what are the components of the special education assessment process. The assessment process has 4 main phases. These phases include identification and referral, determination of eligibility, and program planning and program implementation and evaluation. With these phases, there are multiple steps. These steps define the purpose of the phases. The steps are as follows: screening and teacher identification of students with school problems, pre-referral intervention strategies, referral and notification of parents, design of the individualized assessment plan, parental permission for assessment, administration, scoring, and interpretation of assessment procedures, reporting results, decisions about eligibility, designs of the IEP, parental agreement to the IEP, implementation of IEP, ongoing monitoring of student progress, and an annual review of the IEP, periodic reevaluation of eligibility. These are all the steps that are under the phases of the assessment process. Now, we can describe the assessment process as a cycle because these phases and steps are repeated over and over again as the teacher monitors the effects and progress of the interventions put in place for each child. Moving on, we're going to look at family participation in the assessment process, and we're going to identify some strategies that professionals can use to encourage family participation in the special education assessment process. Family participation is very important and can serve a lot of benefits for them and their child. The parent and the educational professional should constantly be working together to find the best resources for their child. One strategy that can be used is very important that can be used and is very important in parent-professional partnerships is communication. To encourage family participation, the teacher can email, call, text, send notes, send newsletters, etc. By regularly communicating with families, you are building a relationship with them that can lead to a healthier partnership as well as healthy communication skills, all of which will benefit the student in the end. Another strategy that can be used in the classroom is an open door policy. This policy helps families and parents feel welcome. By feeling welcome, they are more likely to be accepting of the educational environment that their child is placed in. This helps build trust in a partner-professional-parent relationship. Another strategy is providing parents with accessible ways to give their input. This will build and encourage family participation, and this can be done in person as well as virtually or through technology. This will allow the parents to speak freely and openly about their child's strengths, weaknesses, and needs. Another strategy is showing the parent that you value their beliefs and cultures and allow them to see your passion and how serious you take your job. When discussing these topics, the family and the teacher can discuss the learned behaviors that come from their culture. It's important that the professional respects the family's culture and adjusts to the needs of the student. These needs could involve a language barrier or other different actions or representations that we typically might not see in cultures from our area. So it's important to consider these things when building family partner parent relationships. And lastly, a teacher can sit by parents during meetings to ensure that their needs are being met and that they are getting their answers to any questions that they may have. Each of these ideas would be so beneficial in creating lasting relationships with parents. By showing them that you want to put an effort to help their child, they will then in return be more likely to put an effort in a relationship with you. And moving on to our next slide, we're going to be looking at different types of derived scores. We're going to look at what the different types of derived scores are and how they are similar and how they are different. There are 3 different types of derived scores. We have standard scores, percentile ranks, and STAINs. First, we're going to talk about standard scores. Standard scores are often used during norm reference measures. These scores are transformed from raw scoring to a scale that has a set mean and standard deviation. Standard scores are beneficial when comparing the performance of the same individual on 2 different measures. They also help provide a standard scale for the individual for reporting norms for various ages and grade level groups within different standardized samples. Another type of derived scoring is percentile ranks. Percentile ranks indicate the percentage of individuals with the norm group who have achieved a raw set of scores or a lower one. Usually, tests provide tables of percentile ranks for different ages and grade levels. This allows for a more precise description of the student's performance. Percentile ranks can easily be confused with percentages. This happens frequently. A percentile rank refers to a percentage of persons, whereas percentages refer to the percentage of test items. Percentile rank data indicates the relative position within a norm group. And lastly, we have STAINs. STAINs is another type of derived score. The STAIN score distribution is divided into segments. Each of these segments have a 0.5 standard deviation width. Excuse me. STAINs represents a range of performances rather than a specific score. Because of this, the data that is provided is less precise than those from standard scores. You could consider this a difference between standard scores and STAINs. On the STAIN scale, there are only 9 possible scores. This method considers a student's rank. Each STAIN score represents a wide range of raw scoring. Now, when we look at the similarities, standard scores and percentile ranks are similar because they both deal with a student's raw score. STAINs is similar to standard scores because they are both a type of standard scoring. STAIN scoring also has to deal with raw scoring similar to percentile ranks and standard scores. Now, when we look at the differences, when using percentile rank scoring, it is difficult to make comparisons against ranks. With standard scores, there is a difference of 10 points everywhere on the scale, so it would be easy to compare scores. So that is how standard scores and percentile ranks differ. Like I previously stated, though, STAIN scoring is less accurate than standard scoring, so that is a big difference between those 2 scoring types. And this can also be demonstrated on the distribution graph. And as you can see, this graph, which is provided to us in our textbook, shows the different types of scoring. So we have the standard score, which also involves the t-score and the z-score. And then we have our percentile rank scoring and our Stanine scoring. And you can see the differences. This one goes up by 15, goes down by 15. The percentile one goes up by 5s, and then it goes up by 10s. And the Stanine one has its 9 sections as it is described. That is all I have. So thanks for watching and have a good rest of your day.